Stories from eternity.
In the 1880s, a folklorist on the Orkney Islands, off the north coast of Scotland, sat down with an old farmer and asked him to describe the worst night of his life. The folklorist's name was Walter Traill Dennison. He spent years collecting the stories of the islands before they died out, and he was careful about what he wrote down. And he noted something remarkable about this one. Of all the monsters in all the folklore of Orkney, there was one creature so feared that people would not say its name without immediately adding a prayer. And in all his collecting, he found exactly one man who claimed to have seen it up close and lived. The man's name was Tammas. The thing he met on the road one night was called the Nuckelavee, and to this day his account remains the only detailed description of it ever recorded. To understand what Tammas saw, you need to understand where he saw it. Orkney is a scatter of low green islands between Scotland and the open North Atlantic. There are almost no trees. The wind never fully stops. The seal is never out of sight and never out of earshot, and everything the islanders had, their fields, their cattle, their kelp fires, their lives, existed on a narrow strip of land between the ocean and the lochs. The old Orcadians believed the sea was ruled by powers older than the church. In summer, they said, a benevolent spirit called the Mither of the sea kept the deep waters calm and kept the worst things bound beneath them. But the Mither's strength failed every autumn, and in the black half of the year, the thing she kept chained was free to come ashore. The islanders blamed it for everything that could not be explained. When crops rotted overnight in a dry season, when a plague ran through the horses, when the rain refused to come, they said the Nuckelavee had breathed on the land. His breath was called mortar-sheen, and it withered whatever it touched, plant, beast, or man. And there was one thing that drove him into a fury above all others, the burning of seaweed. This part is history, not legend. In those years, Orkney farmers burned kelp in stone pits along the shore to make ash for sale, and the industry kept whole islands alive. The smoke was thick and bitter and drifted out over the water, and the old people said the Nuckelavee could not bear it. When the kelp fires burned, he would rise, and something would die. Tammas knew all of this. Every islander did, which is why what he did that night was so foolish. He had been visiting a neighbor, and he stayed too late, and the night came down while he was still far from home. His road ran along a narrow neck of land. On one side, the sea. On the other, a freshwater loch. No way off the path in either direction. Water to the left of him and water to the right, and no light anywhere except the faint grey shine of the waves. He was halfway along that road when he saw something huge moving toward him in the darkness. His first thought was a horse and rider. The shape was right, a great horse, and a man's torso rising above it. He called out a greeting. Nothing answered. The shape kept coming, and as it came closer, Tammas realized two things at almost the same moment. The rider was not sitting on the horse. The rider was growing out of it. One creature. The man's torso rose straight from the horse's back, with no legs of its own, and its arms were so long that its hands nearly dragged along the ground on either side. Its head was enormous, far too large for the body, and it rolled and lolled from shoulder to shoulder as the thing moved, as if the neck could not carry the weight. The horse's face below had a single eye, and Tammas said that eye burned like a red flame, and from somewhere in the horse's head came its breath, rolling out ahead of it like smoke off a fire. That was the first thing. The second thing was worse. and it is the detail that has kept this creature in nightmares for 200 years. It had no skin, nowhere. Not on the horse, not on the rider. Tammas could see every muscle moving as it walked, raw and dark and glistening. He could see white tendons sliding over joints, and he could see the veins standing out over the whole body like a net, and through them, plain in the darkness, black blood moving. Tammas understood he could not outrun it. The road was a trap, water on both sides. And the old stories chose that moment to come back to him, the way old stories do, and one of them saved his life. The Nuckelavee is a devil of the sea. Salt water is his kingdom, but fresh water burns him. He cannot stand rain on his raw flesh. He cannot cross a running stream, and of the two waters on either side of that road, the sea on the left was death, but the loch on the right was fresh. So as the thing bore down on him, Tammas did not run back. He swerved toward the loch, to the very edge of the path, where the ground was soft and the fresh water lapped at the stones. The creature's huge arms swept out to take him, and Tammas stumbled, and one bare foot splashed down into the shallows of the loch, throwing fresh water across the monster's foreleg. The sound it made, he said, was not a roar. It was a shriek, like a horse and a man screaming at once. The thing recoiled from the splash as if the water were fire, and in that gap Tammas ran as he had never run, along the water's edge, with the thing recovering and coming after him, its breath at his back, its hands sweeping the air behind his head. And ahead of him, crossing the road, he saw his one chance. A burn, a small stream of fresh water, running down out of the fields into the loch. Running water, the one thing the devil of the sea can never cross. Tammas said afterward that he felt the fingers of one enormous hand brush the back of his neck at the very moment he leapt. He landed sprawling on the far bank of the burn, and behind him the great hand snatched at the empty air and caught his hat and tore it away. And there the thing stopped. On the far side of a stream a child could step over, screaming its two-voiced scream into the night, with an old man's hat in its fist, unable to cross one thin ribbon of moving fresh water. Tammas did not stop running until he reached his own door. He told the story for the rest of his life, always the same, never embellished, and he told it to Walter Traill Dennison, who wrote it down. And Dennison recorded one more detail that I find worse than all the rest. The islanders did not treat this as a tall tale. They organized their lives around it. Travelers timed their journeys to avoid that stretch of road after dark. And when the crops withered or the horses sickened, the old people would quietly note whether anyone had been burning kelp, and whether the rain had kept away. Because rain was protection, rain was fresh water falling from the sky, and a dry black winter meant the roads belonged to him. Think about that. An entire community, for generations, kept watch on the weather not because of the harvest, but because rain was the only thing standing between them and what walked out of the sea. The kelp industry collapsed. The old language faded. The stories thinned out, the way stories do. Today the Nuckelavee survives mostly in books, and in the memory of that one man's account, the horse and rider that were one body, the head too heavy for its neck, the flesh with no skin, and the black blood moving through the veins. But if you ever find yourself in Orkney, in the black half of the year, notice the roads. Some of them still run along narrow necks of land, with the sea on one side and a freshwater loch on the other. Locals will tell you the old names for these places, and some of them will smile when they do. And if you walk one of those roads at night, and something in the darkness ahead of you looks like a horse and rider, do one thing before you call out a greeting. Wait for it to pass a light, and check that it has skin.